Hello everyone, my name is Eva. Welcome to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to do something different. I've been studying Shakespeare's plays for 4 years already, so I understand how difficult it gets. This session I'm taking a course on Shakespeare, so I developed a method to study his plays efficiently. The purpose of this video is not just to help students and save them some time, but also to make Shakespeare more accessible to those who want to read his stories for enjoyment. I know Shakespeare can be intimidating, but the themes of his plays are so universal that they are completely worth reading. Once you get on track, you should be able to understand the stories and enjoy them. In the first part of this video, I'm going to explain to you my process and why I do it this way. In the second part of this video, I will share some tips and other things to consider, especially if you are trying to get a deep understanding of the play. Tip number 1, know the story in advance. You can do this by watching a summary of the play on YouTube, or you could read a summary online. I personally use this book, which contains a summary of every act. Knowing the summary of the play in advance will save you some time because you can pay attention to the play instead of trying to figure out what is happening. Tip number 2. Watch the play. You can do this in person or online. I live in a French city, so I always have to watch the plays online. Do not watch a modern adaptation or a movie. Suppose you watch an apocalyptic version of Julius Caesar, where the language is modernized and some characters and scenes from the original play have been excluded. In that case, this step will not work. You could do that after reading the play if you want to, but before reading the play, stick to a production that is faithful to the source material. Remember that the plays are meant to be performed, so movies are not very useful for this step. You can watch the play online on YouTube, Amazon Prime, and Market TV. I use the Market TV one because they have the Royal Shakespeare Company's performances, but this site can be a bit pricey. Step 3, read the play. Because you know the story and have seen the play, once you begin reading, you will have a clear picture of what is happening. You will visualize the characters with the faces of the actors that you saw playing these roles. And overall, the story is going to come to life in your head. Plays don't have a clear description, so having a tangible image in your head will enhance your reading experience. In many of these plays, there are characters with twin names, such as Edmund and Edgar, Oliver and Orlando, and Antonio and Alfonso. So by associating each name with a different actor, you will avoid confusing them. You will also remember which characters are present in a scene, even if the characters are not talking or interacting. If you follow these steps, you don't need to figure out what is happening as you read. You can focus on the language and themes of the play without dealing with interruptions. If you are reading Shakespeare for enjoyment, I think following these 3 steps will be enough for you to understand the story. However, if you want to continue reading other plays and want an in-depth understanding, you should follow the next steps. Tip number 4. Acquaint yourself with common expressions, verb conjugations, and pronoun usages that appear repeatedly in the stories. I will link some websites below where you can find a list and explanations. You don't need to learn this by heart, but it's good to have a certain awareness. The more you read Shakespeare, the more you will get used to these expressions. Tip number 5. Read the footnotes. If you are a beginner, read all the footnotes, but choose your edition according to your level. I will discuss the different editions of the plays at the end of this video. The advantage of reading footnotes is that you gain a deep understanding of the story. The downside of footnotes is that they lower the quality of your reading experience by interrupting it. I will advise you to read in full sentences, circle the words that you don't understand, and once you have read the whole phrase, check the meaning of that word. But do not interrupt the sentence by checking before the sentence is over. Once you are more advanced, don't read all the footnotes. Instead, trust yourself and your knowledge of the language. An exercise that I used to do and that helped me a lot with this is that whenever I didn't understand a word or a phrase, I tried to come up with different possible meanings. Then I would check the footnotes. 90% of the time, my comprehension of the text was correct. When you do this, you will be surprised to know how much you already understand. Tip number 6, know what type of play you are reading. Shakespeare's plays are divided into different categories. Shakespeare didn't do this. This was done by scholars. Nevertheless, it is useful to consider this because it will give you insights into what the play is attempting to do, and you will know what you should expect from this story. Tip number 7, familiarize yourself with the archetypes. Knowing these archetypes can be useful to understand the function of certain characters. Some of these archetypes are the fool, the tragic hero, the damsel in distress, the anti-mother figure, and the protagonist as a stage manager. Tip number 8. Consider other aspects of the plays. One of them is the meta-theatrical commentary, in which the play tells something about drama and theater. Sometimes one of the characters embodies the role of a stage manager, and the plot of the story is driven by this character as if he were directing a play. You also need to consider the link to the monarchy. Depending on when the story was written, the play is going to reflect social anxieties related to the ruler of that period. For instance, plays written during the reign of Elizabeth I are concerned with the themes of succession, because she was a woman and she didn't have children. The monarchy transitions could drastically affect people's lives, so not knowing who would succeed Elizabeth caused so much anxiety. Also, Shakespeare worked for the court, so he had to find a middle ground between the story he wanted to tell, the story the court wanted to see, and the story that the common people would understand. He had to please a lot of people. The last thing you should consider is the historical context. There are a few things that no one understands, such as jokes and cultural references, because their meaning was lost to history. Remember that social roles also have changed. Not only gender roles, but the roles that people had in their families or in society. For instance, the duty of an Elizabethan mother was a bit different from the duty of a mother nowadays. What I mean to say is that before judging, it is good to understand the context. It is also important to consider allusions to mythology, classical history, and the Bible. Number 9. These are a few things that you should avoid. The first one is not to take Shakespeare out of his historical context. Not only is this unfair, but it will lead you to make uneducated assertions. For instance, you could say this character is a misogynist, or this story is misogynist. But if you assume that Shakespeare was a misogynist for writing this character or that story, that will get you into a lot of trouble. Once you have read many of his works, you will realize that not only he was aware of the hatred against women, but he also created strong female characters, both protagonists and villains that challenged the role of women in Shakespeare's society. The second thing you should avoid is reading translations of the plays from Elizabethan English to contemporary English. If you do this, you will never get used to the original way in which the plays were written. The meaning of the stories will also be lost in those translations. Shakespeare plays with the syntax very often. The result is that one sentence can tell you 3 different things. This is something that you will not get in a contemporary English version. Tip number 10. Choose an edition that suits you. I alternate between the Folger edition and the Arden. The Folger is for beginners, but is my favorite because of the format. The acts are separated like this. The fonts are big. The footnotes are on a separate sheet, and the fonts are also big. You also get a section with longer notes, and you get a summary of each scene. I also love the quality of the paper. I don't like white paper, so for me this is ideal. To me, the Folger gives you the best reading experience. I recommend the Arden only if you're a literature student. The footnotes are very lengthy, which is good. You also get a lot of historical background. If you're doing research, this edition contains lots of scholarly references and recommended readings that are going to be useful for your paper. That being said, I find the introductions of the art a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they are handy and sometimes they aren't. What they mostly tell you is where the discussions about specific topics of the plays stand nowadays. My favorite introductions are the ones in the Oxford and Penguin collections. I find them very insightful and they tell you everything you need to know to understand these plays. I also keep collections without footnotes to use whenever I want to read for enjoyment. If you don't have the resources to buy books, you can always find these plays online for free. I am not sure if they contain footnotes, which can be a problem, but definitely they are very accessible. I will link those websites below. If you don't know where to start with Shakespeare, my suggestion will be to begin with The Tempest. This is a short play and its structure is very neat, and it is also very entertaining since it begins in the middle of the action. It also has many cool mythological allusions. This play is also considered an early commentary on colonialism, so I think the story resonates with modern audiences. So that's the end of this video. I hope you find this useful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. Have a wonderful Easter holiday and take care. Bye!